Now it's time for behavior management basics. Okay, this might be a review, this might be brand new to you. So, when I do this in person, I can tailor it since you're watching the video version. I apologize if some of it is review, but let's hear it again. It's a great reminder. So first and foremost, when I say behavior, you're probably envisioning a negative or an unsafe behavior. But remember that behavior is all inclusive. The way that we cross our arms is even a behavior. And all behavior is a form of communication. Behavior happens when we don't have the words to express what we want to say, or even when we don't feel like using the words, right? So it's still communicating something. And interestingly, this could be perceived as I'm shut down, I don't want to be here. This could be perceived as it's cold. So it's important to remember that when we're interpreting behavior, we might have the meaning off, right? Next, behavior is motivated by three things. Maybe four, but for now, three, right? Okay, first one, obtaining. We're looking to get something. Second one, avoiding. We're looking to get out of something. And finally, meeting a sensory need. So if you didn't know that, you might see some behaviors that seem kind of strange. You might see flapping, rocking, thumb sucking. That's kind of a maladaptive sensory need meeting behavior. So keeping that in mind helps us understand, why is a child doing a specific behavior? They're either trying to get something, trying to get out of something, or just trying to meet a sensory need. Now, really, we want to say, okay, that doesn't work anymore if it's a negative or unsafe behavior, and here's your new avenue, right? We're trying to help them obtain what they need, avoid what they don't want to do, find a way that works to meet their sensory needs that also fits within our group agreements or behavior expectations. So that's really our goal. Behavior is an opportunity to learn. All behavior is learned behavior. Either they did it and it worked, so they learned, okay, I can do that behavior and it's going to get me what I need or get me out of what I need or meet that sensory need, or they saw somebody else use it and it worked. And that's important to remember, because if you're seeing an unsafe or negative behavior that you need to address, it's an opportunity to learn. Great, I'm going to learn about why they're doing this, and they're going to learn a new behavior too. It's just an opportunity for learning. We want to move into understanding. So to get at why a behavior is happening and how we can address it, we need the ABCs. The A stands for antecedent. That's something that comes before. So in looking at a behavior, say, running out of the room, like we were talking about a runner, right? What was the antecedent? What was the trigger? What was the cause? Maybe it was that a homework sheet came out and they did not want to do it. Maybe it was that they had a conflict with a friend and that emotionally escalated them. So what was the antecedent? What was the behavior? That was leaving the space without permission. And what was the consequence? How do we handle that situation? So we gave them their space. We asked them to come back into the space, and a report was written and followed up with parents about, right? Or, also considering what was the consequence. Consequence was, they got to get out of that space. They did not have to deal with that homework sheet at that time, or they did not have to face that friend, and they got cool off time, right? So did it meet their need, right? And can we find a new way to meet that need in the future without the behavior that we didn't like or that didn't fit for us or wasn't safe, right? Now, the last piece I'm going to talk about here is planned ignoring. So sometimes behaviors are to get negative attention. Maybe that's what this child has become accustomed to, right? And so they're going to poke us in the arm until we pay attention, even if we're talking to somebody else. Or they're going to use potty talk because they know it gets a rise out of people, or swearing, like we talked about earlier, right? Sometimes the approach there is to not feed the behavior, because we know actually what they want out of this situation is attention, right? So we're just going to ignore it. Now, the thing you have to know with this, and it's not always going to work, is that planned ignoring, the behavior will get bigger and badder and louder before it has an extinction burst and stops. So sometimes we can work with that. Sometimes we're in welcome circle and we've got kids laughing at an inappropriate joke. And if we say, we're going to ignore them when they do that, you guys, I'm not going to say anything when they do that because we don't think that's funny and that behavior needs to stop. It's distracting and it's disrespectful, right? And so they do it again and they do it again and they do it again. Eventually, if they're not getting anything from it, the behavior is going to stop. And we could probably work it out in that setting. Sometimes we can't use planned ignoring, but sometimes it does help, right? Here are something, a list, again, the inappropriate side of how we would handle behaviors. And now I don't anticipate that you would do any of these. but it's great to see them laid out. So please definitely read it. And the one I'm going to highlight right now is shaming, because this is fairly new. The research on shaming and its effect, only really in the last 10 years have we figured out, oh, that's not so great. So a lot of us were raised with it, and it might just be kind of natural to us. So I'm going to point out the distinction to you, okay? If we are feeling guilt, that's actually a positive emotion that can show us something I did was wrong and I need to change it. If we're feeling shame, it means we've internalized what we did as our identity. So we need to distinguish the person from the behavior. Even if somebody's doing like bullying level physical violence against other kids, right? We might be so upset by the injustice of that situation and used to shaming because that's the way we were raised. It might be our inclination to say, quit being so mean, or why are you such a bully? But when we do that, we have that child identified as a mean kid or a bully kid. And then that is who they are. And all you can expect from a bully is bullying behavior. Whereas if we used appropriate levels of guilt and we said, that is mean behavior, you are not a mean person. You need to change that behavior because it is not okay in this space. There's a little bit of a separation. I'm a good kid. I made a bad choice and I can make a different one moving forward so we're not stuck in a cycle. So that's one thing I want you to look out for, okay? Now, we want to change behavior before it even happens, right? So we're going to use antecedent interventions. Again, antecedent was the first thing that happened before the behavior. So it's also an area we can control factors to avoid the behavior that we didn't want happening ever happening. It's like magic. So first one I have on here, basic needs. Kids honestly don't have a ton of control over their lives. If they don't have parents that are really consistent, they may not have to go to bed at a certain time. So they might be really tired. Maybe they need to rest that day if you're getting the tired vibes from them. Maybe they're unfortunately experiencing food insecurity. So let's make sure they get their snack because that's going to affect their mood, right? Other things we can do before club starts, before we pick up those kids, close doors they're not supposed to go through. Remove supplies from sight that they're not supposed to be getting into. Avoids conflict. The visual schedule, I already talked about the daily schedule, but this is incredibly helpful. Again, as an antecedent intervention, we can stop behavior before it happens by reviewing what is expected before we get there. In the situation where we've got like a stall, they really don't want to do something, let's simplify to a first, then. Now, critical to this, the then has to be something they want to do. Let me give you an example. First, wash hands, then eat snack. First, clean up snack mess, then play outside. When we break, a whole string of instructions down to just first we do this, then we do this, it's going to be really helpful for some kids. Social narratives. Social narrative is telling a little bit of a story and making it less personal. So, you can use a character name. You could talk about it yourself. When I use scissors, I cut away from myself. That way I'm safe and my picture turns out well. When I walk to the bathroom, I use my walking feet. I go, I flush, I walk to the sink and wash my hands, and then I return to my classroom using my walking feet. I've told a little story, and that's a great way to explain what's expected out of behavior. Social proverbs are kind of similar, but way shorter, mantralized phrases. So in that bathroom example, I would use a social proverb with kids, and I would have to say it like, 10, 15, 20, 25 times before it's an internalized thing that they can work into their skill set, but it's going to sound like go, flush, wash, return, or walk, right? So I'm telling them, get in, get out, be clean about it, but I'm doing it in go, flush, wash, return. And I can say that over and over and over till it becomes something they're used to hearing and they can do it more. Now, giving a choice of two. So I already explained a giving a choice of two example. We did that with the runner. We could work with either of their choices because our bottom line of getting back into the space is met, but they get to pick how that looks, right? So that's going to be a practice you need to adopt. You need to figure out how to give choices of two. What are two things you can work with? And then let them pick which one they're doing. And it might be, are you going to put your shoes on first and then clean up your snack? Or are you going to clean up your snack and then put on your shoes? Either way, we're getting both those things that we wanted done. And now replacement behaviors. So It doesn't have to be some elaborate, beautiful scheme of exactly what they should be doing. It's more like if they're running, we say walking feet, because that helps them visualize what they should be doing. And it starts to cut that groove in the synapses in their brains rather than saying don't run, even though we said don't, they visualize running, right? So we're going to give replacement behaviors what we would prefer that they do, right? Gentle touch, right? Giving some options of what they can do instead. Okay. Now, group agreements, I've talked about these several times. We use these 3 bolded terms because that's what the schools around here use. So the kids are all familiar with be respectful, be safe, and be responsible. And those are beautiful and vague enough that anything can relate to that, as you can see here. And I've also phrased everything in the positive. Again, that helps them start to visualize it. Oh, I skipped one. Why do we use harmonicas? I told you I would explain this. So it's a trauma-informed practice. If, when we were growing up, there was attention getters like 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, and everybody yells back, yes, 1, 2, eyes on you, or clap patterns. And then everybody copies that back. And it's effective to get people's attention to a point, right? What we have found is that for individuals that have experienced or witnessed verbal or physical abuse, it also triggers them. And so they're in no place to listen and learn, which is exactly why we called their attention in the first place. Hence why we use harmonicas. And you can see all these littles given like a 1, 2, they're not having side conversations anymore, and they're throwing up a little peace sign because it's calm. They've also got still bodies, which is good. For our older kids, it's not as critical that they do this, but that's our call to attention, is the harmonica blow. So you will be getting a harmonica. You probably need to practice with it. I'm going to show you an example of about how long you should be blowing your harmonica to get kids' attention. Okay, that's enough time for everybody to start noticing you're blowing the harmonica and get into a frame to be listening. Now, 2 things with this. If they don't listen on the first one, you need to not blow it a second time, because then you're slowly training them that they don't have to focus on the first one. What you need to do instead is thank them, and always thank them when they do respond appropriately. It sets an example, and it's also an acknowledgement that they stopped what they were doing to give you their attention, which was a choice, even if it's an expectation. So gosh, thank you for helping me out with that. Or thank you, Micah, you're setting a great example for the rest of the group, right? And then I'm going to say, I see that a lot of people are still not focused though. So we're going to have to practice it again. Please help your neighbor get on task. Ready? And then I'm going to blow it again, and we're going to practice, which has clearly distinguished it from, oh, I'm just doing this a second time because not everybody focused, right? And also, nobody really likes the practices. So it's highly motivational to be like, oh, I don't want to do this again, but it seems like we're having trouble focusing on it, right? So those are some tips around the harmonica. Recognition. Okay, so this is how we reinforce good behaviors so we can avoid getting to those conflict situations. The main way we do that, I said I would talk about this later, I think, is the bead system. And so you can see the shoe holder here. And this is the most sustainable way we've found to reinforce positive behaviors. You've probably heard of sticker charts, right, where those are the rewards. Well, here we give out little beads and we say, thank you for helping with cleanup. You earned a bead. These shoe containers are going to have their names on them. They stick their beads in there, and they can turn a certain amount in for a piece of candy. And that's just the most motivational system we've found. In your first few days at club, you are going to be the bead machine. And you can think of it as you are putting money into savings accounts. So you are passing it out for every single little thing. And that's important because eventually you're going to need to withdraw from that account. And by that, I mean, you're going to need to redirect a negative behavior. And if you don't have any money in that savings account, your check's going to bounce. And that's going to sound like a kid saying, I don't have to listen to you. I don't even know who you are, right? So we're building up a positive rapport in our first 2 weeks, and a lot of it, right? Eventually we get to the point where we don't give a bead out for every single thing, and instead we start doing some, I see that, thank you, right? And then the next time we do a bead, right? And that's how we slowly, and it's called operant conditioning. So the child ends up doing the behavior all the time because they never know when that bead reward is going to be coming, right? And that's a great way to work good habits in for yourself as well. Now, specific and non-evaluative. I'm going to challenge you here because I'm pretty sure this isn't a practice you've heard of or are doing now. And it's something I still struggle with after working on it for 3 years. So this is taking those opportunities of recognition to the next level. Okay, that's going to sound like when a kid brings me a coloring page that they did, instead of me just going, oh, cool, or oh, I love it. Where I have given them my opinion and said like that was the most important thing, or done an evaluation on it and said it's cool. Instead, I'm going to notice something about it. So I might use I notice or I see or I can tell as my language to explain something. And I'm going to look for something objectively excellent that they should strive to do again, right? So in that, I'm going to say, I can tell you took your time because you only colored outside of lines here and here. And I didn't say it was good, and I didn't say it was bad, and I didn't say it was cool, but I taught them what they should work on again. And I still check that box of like, oh, the adult that I adore noticed me and noticed what I did, right? Or I'm going to say, you used 4 different colors, right? And what I've done in that is taught them I should use a bunch of different colors. That's better than just grabbing the blue marker and scribbling over the whole thing blue, right? I put some time into my work, right? So that's going to be a practice that you work on. And the more public you are about that, the more you're going to see those behaviors in everybody else, because they're going to see, that's what gets praise around here, right? Tootle, I think I mentioned this. I'm not sure. It's the opposite of a tattle. So here's an example of a perfect one. A, it's legible. B, it's thanking them for something specific that they did. And then C, and this is important, it goes above and beyond and it shares the impact of what they did, right? It affected my day. It made this a great place to work. It made club really fun today. And what is that doing? That's developing the thinking of, my behavior affects other people, right? So very important to write that into our Toodles notes. Now, toodles, just like tattles, how tattles are like getting people publicly in trouble for negative behavior, a toodle should be given out publicly in front of the other kids or in front of a parent, ideally, okay? I like this statement, okay? So just take a second to read it here. Yeah, we're working to build up such a positive relationship. All it would take is us saying like, Anna, and it would stop the behavior right in its tracks. Okay, so I've talked a lot about preventing conflict, right? I'm gonna move this for a second. We set up the space before programs start so that we remove obstacles or things that they shouldn't be getting into. It's part of why we do our programs every day, so that they're used to like, okay, we get into this, plus it gives me something structured to do. The most times we have conflict is our free play times, right? We can push those boundaries a lot more of what we're supposed to be doing, setting expectations, reviewing our group agreements that are going to be relevant for the day, reinforcing and modeling. We're showing them how to eat a snack. We're establishing. No, I know that kissing is not allowed at Boys and Girls Club. Kesha trained me on that. I've seen that list, and I know you thought I wouldn't because I'm a new staff, but I'm establishing. I'm the kind of person that's going to reinforce those rules. We're probably not going to have to do that more than once. Really clear explanation. So as we're going into our activities, we're saying, we're going to give this first step a try for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to give the next direction. And in doing that, I give a burst of energy. We're going to play with it, and then we're going to come back and focus and have our next direction, and then we're going to and that being able to channel it like that rather than be like, you need to stay focused for 20 minutes while I explain, and then it's going to devolve into chaos after you do 20 minutes of trying the activity out. This helps channel a little bit of a gas pedal, a little bit of release of energy and refocusing of energy. That's going to work a lot better for you to avoid conflicts. Roles is going to be you going, oh, this older kid is not as engaged, right? So he needs to be a youth leader. He needs to explain the game with me. He needs to pass out supplies. He needs to be helping me with cleanup. He needs to have an alternate activity that he's working on, some math worksheets or something like that, right? So we're finding roles for everybody so they stay engaged. So we do all that positive reinforcement, all these slides here, right? To avoid conflict. Still, conflict's going to happen every single day at club. So it's important to adopt this mindset switch that I have highlighted here. It's a learning opportunity, right? Just like all behaviors are a learning opportunity, so such as conflict, right? So here are 6 steps for responding to conflict, and hopefully remembering it's a learning opportunity, remembering behaviors communicating something, remembering that, what are the ABCs so I can understand what happened first, why they're doing this, what it's getting them, and how we can. That's all going to help you calm yourself down in a conflict situation. And that's key. That's critical. That's why it's number one here. So what that looks and sounds like as you approach a conflict situation is you're going to have open body posture. Like you may even show your palms. That's a sign that you are like here to help. You have nothing to hide. And you're going to do what I'm doing. I'm dropping my voice down a little bit lower. I am talking at a slower rate than I was earlier. And my volume has gone down too. And here I'm showing you, I'm calm, I'm maybe, I'm relaxing my facial expression. What's going on? I want to hear from everybody. When you're sharing, you won't be interrupting. And then when it's your turn, I'll make sure you're not interrupting, right? So then I move into the next stage and I'm acknowledging what's going on. I'm gathering information from them. Importantly, and don't skip this, I'm restating it back to them. So I'm leaning on phrases like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that you said, or you're mad. You said you're mad. And I'm validating any feelings they're having, whether they're right, wrong, makes sense, or whatever. If they're saying they're mad, they're mad. And if you say that back to them, really, if you revisit any of the story, you're solving 90% of the issue right there. They just need to feel heard. And then we move into 5, and this is another one not to skip, right? And not to just breeze in and be like, okay, so you say sorry, but rather take this opportunity. And this is really about restorative justice. Okay. So we are giving the affected person the opportunity to say what would help them feel better. So ask them that. And you may need to have some scaffolding. You may need to have some suggestions. Do you need an apology? Do you need a break? Do you need a hug? Right. And then for the person, that maybe had a behavior that affected other people, we're going to say, what do you think would be a fair consequence for this action and how it affected the other person? So we're collaborating on a solution together. Ultimately, you get to make the final call. You get to do any necessary follow-up. But in doing this, we restore connections between our kids, and we show them also how to fold people back into a community even when they've stepped out of group agreements, because we all make mistakes, right? And we all need to be given another chance. So that's how we address conflict. Now, these are some other tools you can follow as things continue to progress. You can, have a conversation. You can pull someone aside and have a conversation with them. You can suggest that they take a break. I would never use the term timeout because that can be kind of triggering because of past experiences. But I would say, why don't you take a break? Why don't you go to the bathroom, wash your hands, check in the mirror, come on back. Moving, going for a walk, like that's going to get you out of your emotional center into your physical center, and it's going to help you de-escalate, right? So suggesting a little bit of removal from the situation. Parent conversation, so I might say, okay, we talked about this. I want to put it to rest. We have a solution. If I don't have an issue again, I don't have to talk to your parents at pickup. If we do have an issue, I'm going to have to follow up with your family, right? And then in that family conversation, it might be, this is what I dealt with. Do you have any advice? If we filled out several reports because these kinds of behaviors continue to happen with this kid, that's when on our next report, we might say, I think it's time that the admin office has a conversation with the family. And then you can see the final piece here is after we've done all of that, maybe we're suspending a kid from club. And we're saying, we take that behavior really seriously, and you are going to get removed. We want you to work on it. So you're welcome back, but we're showing you how seriously we take it and giving you time to kind of think about that. But it's the end of a long line of trying to avoid the situation. So it's clearly as much our failure as it is theirs if we get to this stage. Now, how do we talk to parents, right? Well, you're the face of Boys and Girls Club. They don't know who I am. They see you on a daily basis. And so they want a relationship with you. They want to know who you are and what y'all are doing with the kids. And so talk to them as often as you can, right? Share those toodles with them, share the good things. That's in the checklist as well. But if you have concerns from the day, you need to put it into the glow sandwich. And I said I would explain that a little bit more. So that's going to be, I start these conversations up by saying, they had a pretty good day. Oh, everybody can drop their shoulders and relax when they hear their kid had a pretty good day. And truly, they can have a pretty good day, even if something went really wrong and that was very hard to deal with, right? So I just start off with that. And then I say, they did seem pretty sad today and withdrawn from club, and we had a hard time participating in the activities. So I wanted to kind of bring that up with you. We talked about it a little bit, and by the end of the day, they were a little bit more participating, able to, get a book read during power hour or whatever. But I wanted you to know about that. So I've sandwiched it between two good things, that they were actually participating and that they had a pretty good day, right? And that's useful for safety, right? That's why I've got it here. If a parent had a really bad day, or they have some unhealthy or inappropriate behavior management techniques, right? We want our kiddos to be safe. So we don't want to just send them home with bad news, right? We want their parents to be convinced that their kid is good. So that's what I have on behavior management.